What happens when one of the most respected comedians in entertainment sits down for what should be a simple interview, only to face a barrage of disrespectful questions and condescending remarks from someone who clearly thinks their platform gives them permission to say anything? In just 40 seconds of a single comment about his personal life, everything changed. The atmosphere shifted. The audience fell silent. And what followed was a masterclass in standing up for yourself when someone crosses a line they should never have approached. The Kelly Clarkson Show had been promoting this interview for weeks. Dave Chappelle, the comedy legend who rarely does talk shows anymore, was finally going to sit down for a conversation. Fans were excited. The network was thrilled. This was supposed to be a ratings goldmine, but nobody could have predicted what was about to unfold on that stage. Dave walked out to massive applause. The crowd was on their feet. He had that calm, cool energy he's known for. He gave a small wave, smiled at the audience, and took a seat across from Kelly. She was grinning, but there was something in her eyes. Something that hinted this was not going to be the friendly chat everyone expected. Kelly started off pleasant enough. They talked about his early days in comedy. They discussed his influences. Dave shared a funny story about bombing at an open mic night when he was 19 years old. The audience laughed. Everything seemed fine. Normal. But then Kelly shifted in her seat, and her whole demeanor changed. "So, Dave," Kelly said, leaning forward with a smile that did not quite reach her eyes, "I have to ask you about something. You took a break from comedy for a while. You just disappeared, left your show, left millions of dollars on the table. A lot of people think that was selfish. Do you think that was selfish?" The audience went quiet. You could feel the shift in the room. Dave paused. He looked at her carefully, like he was trying to figure out if she was serious. "Selfish?" Dave repeated slowly. "I needed to step away for my mental health, for my family. That's not selfish. That's taking care of yourself." Kelly waved her hand dismissively, like what he just said did not matter at all. "But you had a contract. You had people counting on you. Your crew, your writers, the network. They all lost their jobs because you decided to walk away. Do you ever think about them?" Dave's expression hardened. "Of course I think about them. I think about them all the time. But I also think about the fact that I was being taken advantage of. I was not in control of my own work, my own art. That's a problem." "Taken advantage of?" Kelly laughed, but it was not a kind laugh. It was sharp, mocking. "Dave, you were making millions. You were famous. How exactly were you being taken advantage of?" Dave took a deep breath. He was keeping his cool, but you could see he was not happy. "Money is not everything, Kelly. When you do not own your work, when people are making decisions about your art without your input, that is a problem. That is not about being ungrateful. That is about being respected." Kelly rolled her eyes. Actually rolled her eyes on camera. "Respected? You were one of the biggest stars on television. Everyone respected you. Maybe the problem was not them. Maybe the problem was you could not handle the pressure." The audience gasped. Some people started murmuring. This was getting uncomfortable. Dave sat back in his chair and stared at her. He was not smiling anymore. "Kelly," Dave said calmly, "I did not come here to be disrespected. I came here to have a conversation. If you want to have an honest discussion about the entertainment industry and the way artists are treated, I am happy to do that. But if you are just going to sit here and insult me, then we have a problem." Kelly laughed again. That same dismissive, condescending laugh. "Oh, come on, Dave. Do not be so sensitive. I am just asking the questions everyone wants to know. You are a public figure. You signed up for this." "Being a public figure does not mean people get to treat me however they want," Dave replied. His voice was steady, but there was steel in it now. "There is a difference between asking tough questions and being disrespectful. You are being disrespectful." Kelly shrugged. If you think me asking about your choices is disrespectful, maybe you should not be doing interviews. That was the moment. That was when you could see something shift in Dave's face. He was done. He had given her chances to course correct, to turn this into an actual conversation, but she kept pushing, kept being condescending, kept acting like she had every right to talk down to him. But Kelly was not finished. She leaned back in her chair with this smug expression and kept going. You know what I think, Dave? I think you could not handle being wrong. I think when people started criticizing some of your material, you ran away instead of facing it. That is what I think. Dave just looked at her for a long moment. Then he said quietly, Kelly, you do not know what you are talking about. I do not know what I am talking about? Kelly's voice got louder, sharper. Dave, I have been in this industry for 20 years. I won American Idol when you were still doing small clubs. Do not tell me I do not know what I am talking about. The audience was dead silent now. This had gone from an awkward interview to a full-blown confrontation. People were looking at each other, wondering if this was scripted, but the tension was too real. This was actually happening. Dave stood up. He started taking off his microphone. Kelly looked surprised, like she had not expected him to actually do anything about the situation. Dave, what are you doing? She asked, but her tone was still dismissive, still condescending. I am leaving, Dave said simply. He placed the microphone on his chair. I do not need to sit here and let you talk to me like this. I thought we were going to have a real conversation, but clearly you just wanted to attack me. So I am done. Kelly sat up straighter. For the first time, she looked uncomfortable. Dave, come on. Do not be dramatic. Sit down. We are just talking. Just talking? Dave turned to face her fully. Kelly, you have spent this entire interview trying to make me look bad. You called me selfish. You said I could not handle pressure. You implied I ran away from criticism. That is not just talking. That is an attack. And I do not have to sit here and take it. You are being too sensitive, Kelly said, but her voice was less confident now. She was starting to realize this was not going the way she planned. I was just asking questions. No, Dave said firmly. You were being rude. There is a difference, and the fact that you cannot see that says a lot about you. Kelly's face flushed. She looked at the producers off camera, like she was hoping someone would step in and save her, but nobody did. This was her show. This was her mess. Dave, please, Kelly said, and now her voice was different. Less aggressive, almost pleading. Can we just restart? Can we start over? Dave shook his head. No, I gave you multiple chances to have a respectful conversation. You chose not to take them. You chose to be condescending. You chose to try and tear me down. So now I am choosing to leave. But we are not finished, Kelly protested. We still have 12 minutes left in the segment. We are finished, Dave said. I am finished. You can fill the rest of the time however you want. He turned and started walking toward the exit. The audience did not know how to react. Some people started clapping. Others just sat there in shock. Kelly sat frozen in her chair, her mouth slightly open, looking like she could not believe what was happening. Dave! Kelly called out, her voice louder now, more desperate. Dave, come back. But Dave kept walking. He did not turn around. He did not acknowledge her. He just walked right off that stage and out of the studio. The producers were scrambling. The cameras were still rolling, and Kelly was left sitting there alone, trying to figure out what to say next. After a long, awkward silence, Kelly tried to compose herself. She turned to the camera and forced a smile, but it looked fake, uncomfortable. Well, she said, her voice shaky, that was unexpected. We are going to take a quick break. The cameras cut away, but the damage was done. The audience had seen everything. They had watched Kelly repeatedly insult and dismiss one of the most respected voices in comedy. They had watched her be condescending and rude. And they had watched Dave stand up for himself and walk away with his dignity intact. What made this moment so powerful was not just that Dave walked off. It was the way he did it. He did not yell. He did not cause a scene. He simply stated his boundaries, explained why they had been crossed, and removed himself from the situation. Kelly had made a critical mistake. She assumed that because she was the host, because it was her show, she could say whatever she wanted. She assumed Dave would just sit there and take it. But Dave is not just any guest. Looking back at the interview, it is clear Kelly came in with an agenda. From the moment she asked if his decision to leave his show was selfish, Kelly set the tone. That question alone was loaded with judgment. Then came the comment about him not being able to handle pressure. That was when things really started to fall apart. You could see it in Dave's face. He was giving her a chance to recognize what she was doing. But Kelly did not take that chance. She doubled down. And then the ultimate insult, telling Dave he did not know what he was talking about. Bringing up her own career as if it somehow made her more qualified to speak on his experiences. That was when you knew this was not going to end well. Dave tried. He really did. He explained himself calmly. He set boundaries. He pointed out when Kelly was being disrespectful. He gave her multiple opportunities to change course. But Kelly kept pushing. When Dave stood up and started removing his microphone, that was the moment of truth. That was when Kelly finally realized she had gone too far. But by then, it was too late. The damage was done. The way Kelly tried to downplay it afterward, calling Dave dramatic, telling him to sit down, that showed she still did not understand what she had done wrong. Even in that moment, even as Dave was literally walking away, she was still being dismissive. The panic in her voice when she realized he was actually leaving was telling. The way she called out his name, the way she begged him to come back. That was when it hit her that this was not going according to plan. But Dave did not come back. Why would he? Kelly had shown him exactly who she was. She had shown the audience who she was. And Dave had shown everyone what it looks like to stand up for yourself. This interview became a perfect example of what happens when someone in a position of power abuses that power. Kelly had the platform. She had the audience. But what she did not have was respect for her guest. And without respect, none of that other stuff matters. Dave, walking off that stage, was about refusing to participate in something that was designed to tear him down. It was about protecting his peace. It was about showing that no amount of fame means you have to accept being treated poorly. The silence in that studio after Dave left said everything. The audience had just witnessed something they were not supposed to see. They had seen behind the curtain. They had seen a host lose control because they refused to treat their guest with basic respect. Kelly's attempt to recover only made it worse, because everyone watching knew she was not okay. Everyone knew she had messed up, and everyone knew that this was going to be the defining moment of this interview. What makes this situation even more striking is the contrast between how Dave handled it and how Kelly handled it. Dave was calm, direct, clear. Kelly was defensive, dismissive, condescending. She could not hear what Dave was saying because she was too focused on being right. Think about all the moments where this could have been avoided. When Dave first pushed back, Kelly could have acknowledged his perspective. When he talked about being taken advantage of, she could have asked genuine follow-up questions. When he said he needed respect, she could have apologized. But she did none of those things. The most powerful moment might have been when Dave said, "Nah, being a public figure does not mean people get to treat me however they want." Because that is the truth that so many people forget. Fame does not erase your humanity. Kelly seemed to believe that because Dave was a celebrity, he should just accept whatever questions or comments came his way. But Dave pushed back on that idea. He made it clear that there are lines, there are boundaries, and when those boundaries are crossed, there are consequences. The way Kelly brought up her own accomplishments revealed so much about her mindset. She was trying to establish dominance, trying to prove she had earned the right to talk to Dave however she wanted. But that is not how respect works. When Dave removed his microphone, that physical act carried so much weight. It was about taking back his power, about showing that Kelly did not get to control the narrative anymore. About demonstrating that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is remove yourself. The way Dave articulated his reasons for leaving was masterful. He did not just storm off. He explained. He made sure everyone understood why. He told Kelly exactly what she had done wrong, and he did it all without raising his voice. That line, "I gave you multiple chances to have a respectful conversation. You chose not to take them," that summarized everything perfectly. Because it was true. Dave had been patient. He had been clear. He had been more than fair. And Kelly had squandered every opportunity. The scattered applause as Dave walked away spoke volumes. Some of them got it. They understood that Dave was doing something brave. They recognized that what they had just witnessed was not a celebrity having a meltdown. It was a person standing up for themselves. Think about how different this interview could have been. If Kelly had approached it with genuine curiosity, if she had listened instead of just waiting to talk, if she had shown even a fraction of the respect that Dave deserved, they could have had a fascinating conversation. But Kelly chose a different path. The scrambling producers, the cameras still rolling, Kelly sitting there alone. All of that chaos was the direct result of her choices. She created this situation. She escalated it. And when Dave finally had enough, she was left to deal with the consequences by herself. Kelly's forced smile as she announced the commercial break was the image of someone who knew they had made a massive mistake. Her voice was shaky. Her confidence was gone. The control she had tried so hard to maintain had slipped away, and there was no getting it back. This moment came down to a simple truth. Respect is not optional. It does not matter if you are the host or the guest. Everyone deserves to be treated with basic human dignity. And when that dignity is violated repeatedly, walking away is not just acceptable. It is necessary. Dave Chappelle showed everyone watching what integrity looks like, what self-respect looks like, what it means to value yourself enough to say, "I do not have to accept this." And in doing so, he gave a masterclass in standing up for yourself that will be remembered far longer than any joke he could have told. Kelly Clarkson showed what happens when you let your ego override your basic decency. She had one of the greatest comedians of all time on her show, and instead of creating a memorable conversation, she created a memorable disaster. Not because Dave overreacted, but because she could not stop disrespecting him long enough to see what she was doing. The empty chair that Dave left behind became a symbol of what happens when you push someone too far, a symbol of boundaries being enforced, a symbol of someone choosing their peace over someone else's entertainment. In the end, this interview was not about Dave Chappelle losing his temper or being difficult or unable to handle tough questions. It was about Kelly Clarkson repeatedly crossing lines and then acting surprised when there were consequences. Dave gave Kelly every opportunity to course correct, every opportunity to show respect, and when she refused to take any of those opportunities, Dave made the only choice he could make. He walked away. And in doing so, he showed everyone watching that sometimes walking away is not giving up. Sometimes walking away is the strongest thing you can do. But let us go back to another crucial exchange that happened before things completely fell apart. Because there was a moment where Dave tried one more time to bridge the gap, to explain himself in a way that Kelly might understand. "Kelly," Dave had said, his voice measured and patient, "I understand you are asking questions. I get that. But the way you are framing them, the assumptions behind them, they are not fair. You are starting from a place of judgment instead of curiosity. Kelly had leaned back in her chair, her arms crossed. Dave, I am just saying what everyone else is thinking. Someone has to ask the real questions. The real questions? Dave repeated. Or the questions you think will get you attention, because there is a difference. That was when Kelly's expression had changed again. Her jaw tightened, and her eyes narrowed slightly. Are you saying I am doing this for attention? Really? I have my own career, Dave. I do not need to use you for attention. Then why are you being so aggressive? Dave asked. Why are you treating this like a confrontation instead of a conversation? What is the point of all this? Kelly had thrown her hands up. I am not being aggressive. I am being honest. Maybe you are just not used to people being honest with you anymore. Maybe everyone around you just tells you what you want to hear. The audience had shifted uncomfortably in their seats. This was getting more heated by the second. Dave had just stared at Kelly for a long moment before responding. Kelly, there is a difference between being honest and being rude. You keep confusing the two. Honesty does not require disrespect. You can ask tough questions without being condescending. You can challenge someone's choices without attacking their character. But you are not doing that. You are just being mean. Mean? Kelly had scoffed. Oh, so now I am mean. Because I asked about your decision to walk away from your show. Because I pointed out that other people were affected by that decision. That makes me mean? Yes, Dave said simply. The way you asked it, the tone you used, the assumptions you made. Yes, that was mean. And you know it was. You are not naive, Kelly. You know exactly what you are doing. Kelly had laughed. But it was not a real laugh. It was defensive, bitter. Wow, okay. So now I am being accused of being mean and manipulative. This is great. This is exactly what I wanted from this interview. What did you want from this interview? Dave had asked, genuinely curious now. What was your goal here? Because if your goal was to make me look bad, congratulations. You are succeeding. But if your goal was to have a meaningful conversation, to learn something, to share something valuable with your audience, then you are failing. Badly. Kelly had gone quiet for a second. Just a second. And in that brief silence, you could almost see her thinking. Calculating. Trying to figure out how to respond. But then her defensive walls went back up. My goal, she said slowly, was to have an honest conversation. Not the sanitized, publicist-approved version that you probably do on every other show. I wanted to talk about the real stuff. The hard stuff. And if that makes you uncomfortable, then maybe you should not be doing interviews. Dave had shaken his head. There you go again. You are making this about me being uncomfortable. About me not being able to handle it. But that is not what this is about. I can handle tough questions, Kelly. I have been doing this for 30 years. What I cannot handle, what I will not handle, is being disrespected in the name of honesty. Those are not the same thing. Then what do you want from me? Kelly had demanded, her voice rising. What do you want me to say? That I am sorry for asking you about your choices? I am not going to apologize for that. I do not want you to apologize for asking questions, Dave said calmly. I want you to recognize that the way you are asking them is problematic. I want you to see that you are not being as objective as you think you are. You came into this interview with assumptions and judgments, and instead of listening to my answers, you are just using them as springboards for more attacks. Kelly had opened her mouth to respond, but Dave held up his hand. Let me finish. You called me selfish. You implied I could not handle pressure. You questioned my motivations. You dismissed my concerns about being taken advantage of. And when I pushed back, you told me I was being too sensitive. Do you see the pattern here? The studio was so quiet, you could hear people breathing. The producers were watching nervously. The audience was completely focused on the exchange happening in front of them. This was not entertainment anymore. This was real. I was just, Kelly started, then paused. I was trying to, another pause. She seemed to be struggling to find the words. Look, Dave, I think you are being a little too sensitive about this. I did not mean to offend you. And there it was, the non-apology, the deflection, the refusal to take responsibility. Dave had heard it and recognized it for exactly what it was. Another insult disguised as an explanation. You did not mean to offend me, Dave repeated flatly. But you did. And instead of acknowledging that and apologizing, you are telling me I am too sensitive. Do you hear yourself, Kelly? Do you hear what you are saying? And I am not asking you to walk on eggshells, Dave said, his patience clearly wearing thin. I am asking you to treat me with basic respect. That is not walking on eggshells. That is being a decent human being. And if you cannot do that, then what are we even doing here? Kelly had crossed her arms again. That defensive posture. That closed-off body language. We are doing an interview, Dave. That is what we are doing. And in interviews, and sometimes uncomfortable things get discussed. If you cannot handle that, then maybe you should not have agreed to come on the show. That was the third or fourth time Kelly had suggested Dave could not handle something. Could not handle pressure. Could not handle tough questions. Each time, she was painting him as weak, as unable to deal with reality. And each time, she was revealing more about her own perspective. Dave had looked at her for a long moment. You could see him making a decision, weighing his options, trying to figure out if there was any point in continuing. Kelly, I think the problem here is that you do not actually respect me. You might respect what I have accomplished. You might respect my career, but you do not respect me as a person. And that is why this conversation keeps going in circles. Kelly had looked like she had been slapped. Her mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. That is not true, she finally said, but her voice lacked conviction. Ma, I do respect you. I respect your work. My work is not me, Dave interrupted. You can respect my work and still disrespect me as a person. And that is exactly what you have been doing this entire interview. You respect Dave Chappelle, the comedian, but you do not respect Dave, the person sitting in front of you right now. And I am done pretending like that is okay. Kelly had tried one more time to salvage the situation. Dave, I think we have had a misunderstanding. Can we just take a breath and start fresh? But Dave had already made up his mind. No, Kelly, we cannot start fresh, because nothing has changed. You still do not see what you did wrong. You still think this is about me being sensitive. You have not taken responsibility for anything. So no, we are not starting fresh. We are done. And that was when Dave had stood up. That was when he had started removing his microphone. That was the moment where words turned into action. Where boundaries became consequences. The panic that crossed Kelly's face in that moment was unmistakable. Because suddenly, this was real. This was not a disagreement that would blow over. This was Dave actually leaving, and there was nothing she could do to stop him. What made the whole situation even more powerful was the silence from the crew. Nobody tried to stop Dave. Nobody tried to convince him to stay. Everyone just watched, because they all knew. They all understood that Kelly had created this mess. The way Dave walked off that stage, it was not rushed. It was not frantic. It was purposeful, deliberate. He moved with the confidence of someone who knows they are making the right choice. And Kelly was left to face the audience alone, left to explain what just happened, left to try and maintain some semblance of control over a situation that had completely spiraled out of her hands. This interview will be remembered. Not because of anything funny that happened, not because of any insights that were shared, but because it showed what happens when someone forgets that respect is not negotiable. Kelly thought she was being a tough interviewer. Dave showed her she was just being disrespectful. And in the end, that made all the difference.